Letting go is really hard to do. This comment or this question came up in the live stream the other day, and I talked about it a little bit, but I thought it would be a good idea to make a video specifically about it. I know I've done it in the past, but I think just with the idea that the question had come up, that it would be good to talk about it again. Well, one of the things when we're going through this, and you're right in the middle of it, you want to fight everything and you don't want to let them get away with anything. Now, I know for me, whenever I was going through that, and part of this came up with the talking about what to respond to and what the triggers are on emails and stuff. And when things are said, that are snarky or condescending or just outright allegations, you feel this pull and this urge that you have to respond, that you have to hold them accountable, to point out that the fallacies in their argument and how what they're saying about you is wrong, and how what your view of it is. And in the early stages of this, it makes sense because you're hurting, you're frustrated, you're sick and tired of it, and you feel that if you don't immediately retort back and correct that wrong and clarify what's really going on, that they're getting away with it. Or worse, you think that if you don't say anything, then you are just, by ignoring it, that you are acknowledging that it's true, that you're not responding because it's valid and there's no argument to make. Now, one of the things that you have to remember when you're dealing with somebody like this is their version of reality switches on a dime. So you really aren't in a position to change their mind, to back them in a corner and prove that they're wrong, because they're just going to shift into something different. They'll make an excuse for it. I mean, for instance, if you respond and you defend yourself, then they can use that to say that, they're going to use that to say that you're lying and you're projecting and you're doing all these different things. And then you'll think that if you don't respond, they'll be like, oh, well, see, they don't respond because they know it's true. You have to realize when you're dealing with someone like this, they are the master at double binds, at no-win scenarios, that no matter what angle you take, you're walking into a trap. And the only way to really not survive, but to win and thrive, I guess, if you want to call it that, in these scenarios, is you don't take the bait. You don't play their game. That's why whenever we were talking about that email that I was going over, and you initially look at it, and there might be things in those communications that get under your skin, that make you angry, that give you that visceral reaction to where you just feel like, you're just ready to, go clickety clack on the keyboard and respond and hold them accountable. And more than likely, you've already done that. And if you have, what you probably noticed, nothing comes of it. Probably the way it plays out, an email is sent, you respond to validate, or not validate, but to clarify your position and to point out their fallacies. And then they're going to respond back with more vitriol and pointing out why you're wrong, why you're the bad guy, why you're not taking responsibility for, for your actions or whatever. Whatever attack that they're going to be able to use. And maybe you'll even respond back. Maybe you'll even go back and you'll pull out of your memory banks examples of that prove your point. And it'll go back and forth to the point where they just decide they don't want to play anymore, and then they silent treatment you. They just stop talking to you. And then that's frustrating too, because then you're in the middle of the fight. You're ready to continue. But the reason I bring that up is if you've been through that already, ask yourself the question, did it accomplish anything? Did it change anything? Did the behavior change? Did the attitude change? And if, maybe it did, maybe slightly did. Maybe you were arguing about something with your children and they finally agreed. ask yourself this: could you have accomplished that same end result with less interaction? If you could have ignored the snarkiness, if you could have just let it go, would you have still accomplished what you wanted to accomplish and saved you the heartache, the headache, the stress, and the anxiety along the way? I mean, you have to think about it in those terms. And the other part of this is you have to get to the point where you're ready for it. And it's been a while since I've talked about this, so I wanted to just touch on this a little bit, is that when you get in those situations, what I mean is those fights where you want to engage, where you feel like, this is a boundary that's been crossed and I have to do something about it. When you're at that stage in this process, you have to, right? If you don't respond, you are going to beat yourself up because you feel like you're letting them win. And I understand that. I get that because I went through the same thing. There were times where I just couldn't let it. I mean, when people made that comment, well, you just need to let it go, I would have a really hard time with that. Because it's like they didn't understand what was going on, and they weren't coming from a context of being able to describe the situation in a way that made sense. They were just saying, well, you just need to let it go because it's not helping. I mean, in some ways that's what I'm saying, but in a normal situation, people can have a dialogue. In a narcissistic situation, you can't have a dialogue. They are going to be focused on controlling the situation and achieving their outcome. They're not going to compromise with you. They're not going to reconcile with you. They're not going to do any of those things that they should do to help make it better. It's just not going to happen. So when you're going through this and you're battling yourself and you're battling the situation, just pause for a moment. Try to take that little step back. Take an objective view of what you're dealing with and really look at what's in your best interest to get that peace, that serenity, that calmness, to remove that chaos out of your life. Now, when you live with this person, and I'm hopefully in this situation, I'm talking about past tense, but if when you live with this person, you couldn't get away from the chaos. You weren't able to. When you're divorced or you're separated or basically they don't live in your house, you have a reprieve. You have a break. You do have to interact with their shenanigans on a periodic basis, but at the end of the day, in your own environment, you're the one who decides if chaos is going to be allowed into your house, if chaos is going to be allowed into your environment. And I think, and I know this is what happened with me, after a while, it just gets so tiring, so emotionally draining that it's not worth the fight. Now, in my situation, I had to prove that to myself. I had to go through it and get to the point where I had this epiphany, where I had this change, where I'm like, I don't want this stress anymore. It was lasting too long. It was going on too long, and I didn't want to feel it anymore. When I got to that point, that was whenever I decided that I was going to let it go. Now, it's not the same thing whenever someone's just telling you to let go of your feelings. That's why I tell you guys, whenever you're going through this, if you're going through this and you have to do some of these things, okay, don't beat yourself up on it. If you have to respond, respond. All I'm saying is like, look at the outcome of it, look at what happens, and really take an objective view to determine whether it was worth it. More than likely, after a few scenarios where you've gone through this, you're going to see that it's not worth it. So my goal with this is if I can help any one of you to realize this faster, to move through this process a little quicker, so that instead of maybe, like in my situation, it took me like 2 to 3 years to have this epiphany. If you can figure that out in a year or 7 months or even faster, then it's better, right? But I mean, this is a really tough thing, and it's not. It is definitely not fun. But after as time goes on, it does get better. As time goes on, the emotional control that the ex has over you, or that you basically allow them to have, starts to diminish. Every day you get stronger, their control over you gets weaker. All right, so if you want to add to the conversation, add it in the comments below. I know I've been really behind in answering, but I still work hard to do that, and I do read every comment. If you like this channel, please subscribe. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and I will chat with you guys in the next video. Take care. Bye.